Welcome, welcome, welcome to the Writer's Block, a short informal lecture series on tips for writers, specifically at Fordham University, but really applicable to writers everywhere. And today we're finally getting around to something that we promised you in the first episode of the Writer's Block, and that is the KnownNew Contract. Now, this is a particular passion of Peter's, so I'm going to hand it off to him.
Awesome, Cathal. Thank you. Yeah, as you say, I think the KnownNew Contract is definitely one of my passions. I teach it when I teach Comp 2, and I'm excited to teach it in my text and context class a bit. I'll share my screen in a moment, but the thing that I want to say to sort of frame the KnownNew Contract is for me, if you adhere to the KnownNew Contract, like this is how you avoid that awful thing when professors write on your page like unclear or what do you mean or vague. And I know that for me, that's one of the most frustrating things that I saw as a student. And so the KnownNew Contract can hopefully help you avoid that.
Absolutely. The one thing that I love about teaching the KnownNew Contract is that you can't do it in a way that doesn't structure the essay. You know, there's a built-in flow to it. So when students are worried about their flow, oftentimes it's a KnownNew Contract issue. They just don't necessarily have the words for it yet.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. It always serves the essay. It serves organization, it serves flow, it serves logical cohesion. Great, so let's get to it. So let me bring up some content here. So just to introduce the KnownNew Contract as an idea, it's pretty simple. It's just this notion that in your essay, whether at the sentence level or the paragraph level, you're establishing familiar or tangible information first before moving to unfamiliar, complex, or novel information. So you wanna begin with something that the reader can grasp onto. And again, we've all had that awful experience of reading a really dense essay that begins with sentences that have information that you don't understand, and it's just really hard to get into the essay, partially because of an error in the KnownNew Contract.
Right, you got to give us something simple and then add to it, or something concrete and then tell us why it matters.
Yeah, exactly. You don't want to alienate your reader, you want to invite them in. So just the first portion of your sentence or paragraph should serve to introduce the second part. So consequently, the second part should rely on the first, right? So it's okay if the second portion of whatever you're saying sort of needs the first portion to introduce it. But the key thing is that the first portion of whatever you're saying should be able to stand alone. It should be self-evident. Like the reader should be able to imagine it or grasp it. So a quick example here would be that you would want to begin by talking about impressionist painters. You wouldn't want to dive right on in and start going on about Mary Cassatt's pastel work in Seville, France in 1873. You would need the concrete basis of here's impressionism, which we can all grasp before moving to the specific.
Right. And that statement at the start of the sentence about impressionism, it should be, you know, an argumentative one, or one that kind of contains a little bit of what we're going to get from understanding Mary Cassatt's work. But we're starting with this like higher level, but kind of very clear statement.
Yeah, exactly. And another very simple way to think about this is you want to construct your sentences or your paragraphs in A, B, C, right? You don't want to leave us guessing and give us B, A, C or C, A, B, because then we don't know what to follow. So when in doubt, A, B, C. Let's take a look at a brief example, a small paragraph that follows the KnownNew Contract regarding Fordham. Cathal, would you mind reading out just this brief paragraph here?
My pleasure. Let's start. Fordham was founded as St. John's College in 1841 by John Hughes. Hughes, who would go on to become Archbishop of New York, was particularly interested in establishing a university to support immigrants, for whom education was a clear path to citizenship. Students from diverse backgrounds congregated in the Bronx, which is only a small farming village, and the Jesuit University of New York was born.
Fabulous, thank you. So we can see clearly the KnownNew in sentences like, where are we? Like this. So we're establishing information, Fordham, and then the year it was founded and its previous name. Oh, sorry. So here's the first sentence here.
Yeah.
So Fordham, we're establishing, and then the new information was who it was established by, John
Right,
Hughes.
Hughes.
So we know logically that the next sentence here should pick up with Hughes, and it absolutely does. So there are two questions here. I'm going to lob these your way, Cathal. So what's the known that readers should recognize in the next sentence? So for instance, if there was a sentence that would come after this paragraph, what do you think?
My guess would be about the Jesuit University of New York. That's what I'd have as a subject. It could possibly be students, since students was the subject of the last sentence, but I would go probably with Jesuit University of New York, since that's what we're talking about. That's sort of the known in the whole of the paragraph.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And we see this as a model in the paragraph. So this sentence begins with students. And if you look at the previous sentence, we see the immigrants who are students is what that sentence ends with. And so, as you said, this sentence ends introducing us to this notion of the Jesuit University. So it would make sense that the next sentence might begin talking about Jesuits.
Kind of doing a handoff, like a relay baton of subjects.
Yeah, that's a really nice way of describing it. Yeah, and if we want to follow this idea of a relay baton, right, like that's a way to avoid writing a circular paragraph or a redundant, repetitive paragraph, which I know that I'm sometimes guilty of. You want to get your reader to the finish line, and as you say, sort of hand things off.
And this kind of thing is really useful when you're covering a lot of ground. If you've got to like cover a huge historical moment, but you only have a paragraph to do it, this kind of thing, like one sentence leads into the next sentence, leads into the next sentence, helps you cover space really quick.
Yeah, great point. This second question here, according to the KnownNew rule, where should we insert the following sentence and why? So where might we put this sentence? The history of universities is often defined by campus moves and name changes, and Fordham University is no exception.
So we've got a pretty broad, the history of universities, and then we introduce Fordham University. So my guess is that we're going to put this at the start and then begin the next sentence with Fordham was founded. So I'd put this actually right at the start.
Yeah, phenomenal. I agree with you. As you've said, the history of universities is sort of this general idea that we are looking at. Remember, that's Impressionism, right? Rather than Mary Cassatt. And then we're moving towards this idea of name changes and regarding Fordham. And as you've said, that perfectly sets us up for this sentence here. Very well done. And anything to add before we jump to our second example here?
No, let's just jump to the second. I think this is great.
All right.
So doing a little bit of teaching about Fordham, which is lovely. So this second example is actually from me. This is one of my college essays, one that I enjoyed writing. It has a number of issues. It's got a number of tone things, but what I like about it is the way KnownNew is employed. Peter, would you mind going ahead and reading this for us? Or at least we can do paragraph by paragraph handoff.
Yeah, my pleasure. American Norseman, McTeague's unacknowledged Irish ethnicity, and the rise of the atavistic Viking. A man once stood on the deck of a ship. He was smoking his pipe on the hatch combings, patiently. There was something taciturn about him that betrayed he was ready for violence at a moment's notice. He was blonde, solemn, silent, with small eyes and a body that belied an animal vitality. This blonde giant, this huge stolid fellow, was with his immense crude strength. But was he tall? Or did he just seem that way when he was stirred into a rage? He reached up and pulled the left side of his Viking mustache with the fingers of his right hand. Or was he clean shaven?
No, I have it wrong. There were 3 men. One a Dane, the captain of a sealing schooner. One an Englishman, a scavenger hunting the same waters. And the other a dentist who had never been to sea, but shared their strength. 3 men, 2 authors, 1 basic description. The atavistic Viking thrown into the modern world. Different nationalities, different dramas, and different stories. What common factor has all of them figured as Norsemen, and quite simply, why?
This is the question that I seek to answer in this paper. Initially, my research was sparked by McTeague, the story of the ill-fated Brutus dentist, and Norris's absolute refusal to call his protagonist Irish. I noted instead the terms huge blonde giant, that the dentist had the great blonde mustache of a Viking. So I did some digging.
Okay, and that's where I leave it off. So, Peter, what would be the known in this situation?
Great question. So you do a nice job in this first paragraph of establishing a scene. And so while there are a lot of details, what sort of sticks in my head is something that I can know and then move forward would be this scene on a ship. We have men and we have someone questioning the description of at least one man on a ship. That's what's established in the first paragraph.
Absolutely. So my goal here was I knew that people wouldn't necessarily know about these 19th century authors. These are books that hardly anyone reads anymore. But what I could rely on is everyone has like this image of a person on a boat. So I can use that as my first known. And then I can work the new bit into that and talk a little bit about these three different authors. And then a little bit more as to why these depictions matter and why they keep on coming around in this time in history. So my known, even though I'm not relying on something that necessarily the reader would have known was happening in these books, it's just such a simple scene that I'm then adding a question to and another question to, or another little bit of information, that by the end of this paper, I'll end up talking about different racial ethnicities and the use of a Viking stereotype and trope in American literature. And we build on that just from the small little one known thing and then add new.
Yeah, and you do this great thing in the first paragraph where you establish questions and you establish a scene that you then problematize, right? Like details accrue, it becomes more complex, but you never like get rid of the initial scene, right? That serves us through all three paragraphs, which is great because as readers in essays, like we want to find our footing, and we absolutely do find our footing in the first paragraph before moving into the more complex second and third.
Sure. And what I always encourage my students to start their writing with sort of an anecdote or recounting a scene that they don't know why it was there or like why something worked. And that sort of like becomes, they have this interest, and that's the known bit about their paper that they're going to then build off of, just keep researching, investigating that. And that these kind of anecdotes work great as like this first little bit of a known for a paper, because it not only gives you the issue that is going to be described throughout the rest of it, but it serves as the hook. The first little bit of known, it's like, oh yeah, I recognize that. So why is that? And that known is then also the hook that keeps people reading.
Yeah. You've hooked me. I would love to know what you said in this essay, and I love how you end with, so I did some digging. You quite literally, you're like beckoning. You're like, come with me down the rabbit hole, which is exactly what we want in an artful essay.
Why, thank you.
Great. I think we've established the KnownNew contract. Just a quick refresher. Big picture. You want to establish something simple that readers can latch onto before moving into the complex. And then when you're reading your own work, right, if you find any instances where you begin where something is too complicated, that would be a great moment to revise so as to avoid the awful vague or unclear in the margins.
Absolutely. Well, Peter, thank you very much for walking us through all of this. Anything else you'd like to say before we sign off?
No, I think we've nailed it. It was my pleasure. I'll look forward to our next video next week.
All right. Take care, everyone.